This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 102 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about today's guest, as always, as I always am. I don't know how I get so lucky with all of these wonderful guests who are willing to come on the show. And today's guest is no exception. Leah Weinberg, you probably know her from ColourPop events, is on the show today to talk about ways you can automate a boutique wedding planning business. But never fear, if you're not a wedding planner, this episode is 100% going to be applicable to you because automation techniques, you guys, are just, first of all, they are everything. You know that a couple episodes ago, we had Annie McCarty on the show, and she talked about using automation tools specifically with, or not using automation tools, but, well, she did, but automating your business specifically using Dubsado and Acuity scheduling. And today, Leah is going to talk about other automation techniques, things that you can do to make your schedule more automated and also to improve your client experience, but really to make things efficient and effective. And one of the things we talk about today is how to do that in a really simplistic way and not get overwhelmed by tools. Because the reality is, sometimes you don't actually need softwares that cost a monthly charge. For instance, something that Leah and I talk about today is how she still uses an Excel spreadsheet for her taxes, and she just has a system that she has created that is simple yet efficient and effective, and it works for her. And I really like to hear kind of different perspectives from people because I think it's important, especially when we're starting out in our businesses, and even if we've been in business for 5-10 years, if you can save, let's say 5 years of a recurring charge, that's a lot of money over time. And so if a spreadsheet is working for you and I'm talking about taxes specifically right now, but anything, right? Like if you don't need a Dubsado, if you only do, and I don't mean only in a bad way, but if you're only doing like 20 to 25 weddings a year and that's your cap, do you really need a client management software? I don't know. Maybe not though. Could you get by with automated canned emails from Google and a really fancy, or not fancy, but a really efficient spreadsheet? Maybe. I don't know. So those are kind of just the questions I like to ask because I talked about this on my episode with Annette Stepanian, but and I still can't remember who said it, but I heard a podcast episode from somebody who's an entrepreneur, an online marketer, and they said that a lot of times we get caught up in using the tools, like we get caught up in setting up to scale our business, when what we really just need to be doing is doing the work. And oh my gosh, I just loved that quote so much. Not my original thought, cannot remember where I heard it, but it was someone else who said it, so just keep that in mind. And I just thought that was so brilliant because it's true. If we're only doing 25 weddings a year, do we really need a $20 to $30 monthly software? I don't know. I certainly use Dubsado, and right now we're looking at like 25 weddings, maybe 30 a year, and it's been really helpful for me, and I absolutely love the features, but could we get by with not using it? It's a good question, isn't it? Anyway, let's get to the interview with Leah. I know you're going to love it. I know that automation episode with Annie McCarty was super popular, and I have no doubt this one's going to be the same. Leah is the owner and creative director of ColourPop Events. It's a New York City-based wedding planning company that focuses on the details and lives in the logistics. Now in her 5th year of business, Leah leverages skills like organization, attention to detail, and client service from her prior career as a commercial real estate attorney to excel at event production. Her colorful work and party planning tips have been published online and in print, get this, with Vogue, Glamour, Mary Claire, Martha Stewart magazines, including Martha Stewart Weddings and Martha Stewart Living, The Knot, Brides, Buzzfeed, and more. What? I asked her how she got into those at the end of this episode because I was so curious. So I hope you don't mind. It has nothing to do with automation, but I really needed to know. So without further ado, let's go to the show. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. It's totally my pleasure. So you guys, you don't know this, but Leah she's kind of just hung out with me for the last 20 minutes here while I get my life together. And I am in Colorado, as you know. She is indeed in New York, so she's 2 hours ahead of me. So I'm so glad that we kind of get to hang out tonight, and thanks for bearing with me through that.
Yes, definitely a great way to spend a Tuesday night.
Yay! Okay, so we have so many cool things to cover right now. And as everyone knows, like I read your professional bio there at the top of the show, but I would love for you to just kind of tell us what you do in NYC as a planner, just a little bit of your background, because I have lots of questions, and then we'll kind of dive right in.
Yeah. In terms of background, to make a very long story short, I was an attorney for a very long time and then decided to launch my event planning business. I've been in business for about 4.5 years at this point. I do mostly weddings, but do some corporate and nonprofit events. But weddings has pretty much become my specialty, I would say.
When did that specialty happen for you, since you've been running your business for so long?
Yeah. So when I started the business, I kind of had this idea of wanting to do all the things. So
Right.
doing weddings and wanting to do fun corporate events and social events. And then did a few sessions with a business coach, actually, who kind of just awakened me. And he's like, well, how many corporate events did you do last year? And I'm like, one. And he says, take it off your website. Because my website had, corporate and social and B2B and weddings. And he says, you do weddings. That's what you do. So weddings has been what I've been focusing on. So I guess it was maybe 1.5 years ago that I kind of revamped the copy and stuff on my website to just make it clear that I'm focusing on wedding. Obviously, I am an event planner, so anybody that knows me knows that I'm capable of doing other types of events. And so I get word of mouth referrals for others for non-weddings. But yeah, weddings has been the focus for a while.
That's awesome. So since you're still getting those word of mouth referrals, do you accept those clients, or can you be a little bit more discerning when it comes to those corporate clients that aren't always advertised on your site?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the corporate events that come to me through those word of mouth referrals are pretty good fits.
Okay,
Some events sometimes that I get are the more social events like birthday parties or anniversary parties, and just sort of where I'm at pricing wise, that's not always going to be the best fit. But the corporate events are usually pretty good. And I do a good bit of work with nonprofits. So every year I donate my services completely, like full planning services for free to at least one nonprofit, and then tend to discount for other nonprofits that I work with throughout the year.
That's fantastic. When did you build that piece into your business?
It kind of just happened organically because I think it was my first or second year in business, through one of my wedding connections. She had started a nonprofit called Lend a Hand Uganda, and they had asked me to volunteer to work on that event. So I did the planning for them that year, and then did it again the following year, and kind of just realized, hey, I am doing these one or two of these events for free each year. This would be a great way to give back and just to kind of make a policy for my business. And when I was an attorney, I did a lot of pro bono work. So volunteer work is really important for me. And so yeah, I've been really happy to just incorporate that into my business.
I like that a lot. Well, I'm really excited. I appreciate you giving us that background. That's I feel like it's a perfect segue into really what we're chatting about today, because we kind of talked about, you do weddings mostly. That's your main gig. You have this amazing, very organic volunteering pro bono piece of your business. And we're chatting about how to automate boutique businesses and really how to scale our businesses in that way. And I think that I feel like I already know this is going to be a great topic, and I feel like this can be a challenging topic because our businesses themselves face challenges. And I know that let's talk about those challenges that we face as kind of these boutique wedding businesses. And then why don't we move into how we can mitigate those challenges through automation and scaling?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is once you've been in business for a couple of years, kind of hitting that point where it's like certain things need to change or grow, or you need to streamline in order to be working more efficiently. And I know a lot of people hit the point where it's like, do I hire somebody? I know that's always a big question.
Yes.
For me, I am a one-woman shop. I do outsource some things, like I have people help with blogging, and I'm getting proposals from people on SEO and stuff. But in terms of just the day-to-day operations of running my business and doing all the client interactions, it's all just me. So I've had to take a hard look at the business and kind of figure out what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what I can outsource, and then ways to implement certain processes to make the business run more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk about when we are at a point in our business, maybe we've been in it for a couple of years, or even just from a financial perspective, we could outsource in one way or another. How do you find that it's helpful for us to determine whether we should, hire another person into our business or whether we should contract out other parts of our business?
Yeah, I think you have to really dig into the numbers. So one of the things that I do, and I picked this tip up from a financial workshop that I was at, was tracking all of my expenses, like personally and professionally. So I knew exactly how much I was spending on things. And so knowing how much you're spending and then doing budgets and sort of sticking with budgets. So as I was going into 2018, I was preparing a budget for myself, and I just knew that blogging, for example, was just something that I was never getting to. I knew I needed to be doing it. I knew that it helps so tremendously with SEO and everything for my website, but I just was never getting around to it. So I was like, okay, I'm adding that as a line item into my budget because I don't need somebody that's a super fancy writer. I just need someone who can do like wedding recaps for me and styled shoot summaries and stuff like that. So I looked at the cost, figured out how much I wanted to pay for that, and then also saw what the value is in that. So it's going to presumably give me an SEO boost. It's creating my own content. And so for me, that was worth it. The weighing like the cost benefit of how much I'm going to spend to pay somebody versus me never getting it done. And then what the benefit is of having like a weekly blog running.
Absolutely. And then how long have you been outsourcing your blogging, and have you personally seen a return on that investment?
I literally just started, so the jury's out on.
The jury's out. See, yeah. She's a lawyer, you guys. Just kidding.
Oh, no, that's true. I didn't even realize I was using the legal jargon.
I love it. I love it. But... No, it's not. It's amazing. That's so good to know. I like it when, we're all in different stages of business. And so I think it's really encouraging to hear that. I just hit my phone. Sorry about that. I think it's encouraging to hear that someone who's had your success, who's been in business for 5 years, you've been really discerning about what you outsource, and this year it's the year of outsourcing blogging, and how will that impact the business? What does that look like for ColourPop events? And so I love that, and I think it's really encouraging to all of us. So what are some go ahead.
I was going to say, and I just wanted to add that I think like the tracking of finances and being very aware of how much you're spending and how much is coming in is something that companies need to do from the very beginning. And I know that they don't necessarily do that because I hear so many people when April rolls around and they're like, oh no, I've got to do my taxes. My opinion is life shouldn't be like that. Like, we should be paying quarterly taxes. We should be doing the estimates. We should be tracking our expenses, and we should kind of know and not have to like face the hard facts in the early part of the following year of what your taxes and finances are going to look like. So it's a good habit.
That's a great habit. I know for myself, I'll just be totally honest here. I had that feeling this year, the non-good feeling of, wow, what are we, what's it going to be?
Right.
So yeah, great point. And I completely relate to that. Well, tell me, what are some other challenges that you're seeing these boutique businesses facing as they're kind of straggling the line between automation and scaling and growing?
Yeah, I think there's certain messages around the automation that makes it kind of an emotional issue almost. People are always saying things like work hard, like work smarter, not harder, automate your business in order to free up your time, or automate your business in order to, maybe be able to expand your client base and maybe work with couples with lower budgets because you're kind of saving money in terms of your operation. So perhaps you can be a little flexible with pricing. So I think there's pressure there to automate when it's not necessarily the right thing for everybody's business. I think for me personally, there's a big difference between automation in terms of me no longer doing a task versus implementing systems and processes so that it makes things more efficient and kind of takes the guesswork out of the running the business part.
Okay, so let's break that down. Let's unpack that a little bit. You just said that there's a difference between you not doing it at all and actually inputting systems and processes. So let's use an example. Like, what does that look like exactly?
Sure. So one example may be invoicing. So let's say you've booked a client, and let's talk about maybe like the final payment. Invoicing of a final payment, I think, is a great example. So there's programs like different CRM tools that people have, like a Honeybook or Aisle Planner or Dubsado. And you just, in those systems, it knows the date that the invoice has to go out and it automatically sends it out for you. So you have done the work on the front end to like onboard the client into that online system. But then when it comes to the final payment being due, you literally don't have to do anything. So that's what I would consider automation. Whereas if you wanted to take a more manual approach, but still have it streamlined, that would be like in my case, I have calendar reminders for the day that final payments are due. And on those days, I generate an invoice to send out to clients.
Beautiful. Okay. I'm really excited about this. So we've talked about the challenges. I feel like we're all probably like nodding our heads. Let's talk about more solutions. This is awesome. So let's do like 4 solutions or however many we have, right? Where we can automate and scale our business. I feel like they work in tandem. Once we could, especially if we're just like one person shows, one person, with outsourced social media, whatever it is. In my case, it's a partnership, but it's still a small business and there's only 2 of us and we only have so much time in the day. So I feel like automation and scaling go hand in hand. They're kind of like a tandem bike. So let's talk about how we can automate. Let's do some tips and then how doing this piece of automation can then help you scale.
Right. Yeah. I think, one thing that you kind of want to automate is your onboarding process, or at least to have a process for what your onboarding process is going to look like. So for example, for my business, I have a checklist that every time I book a new client, it's things like, update my income spreadsheet. So I know the deposit that I've just received, and then I have on the books the deposit that I'm going to receive. It's, making sure that I have a fully executed copy of their contract signed and like saved in their folder. It's going into Google Calendar and adding in the date of the wedding, the time of holding a time slot for the rehearsal, the date, like I said, to send the final invoice, the date to do final confirmations with all of the vendors. So that way, as I'm bringing clients in, I don't have to try to remember all of these things that I need to do. And so and these are the kind of things that if you get into that habit when you're first starting out, you then won't have a problem as you're scaling. You won't have a problem like keeping track of everything because you have this organized process of how you onboard all of your new clients.
Perfect. So it doesn't really matter if you have 5 or 50 people because it's all the same and it's all streamlined.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's audit. And so now, like, particularly with me uploading, putting appointments in Google Calendar or somebody using an online tool where it automatically sends things out, you're no longer having to rely on your memory, for example, to like, we're coming up on their wedding, I should send out an invoice. So, oh my goodness, which I've had people that are new in their business do. I'm like, I was talking to somebody to try to kind of help them think through these things. And I was like, so how do you remember to send out an invoice? And she goes, I just remember. And I'm like, well, that's fine when you have 5 clients when you're first starting out. But like you said, once you have 50, like you're never going to be able to remember to do all that stuff.
No, take those things out of your brain right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What's another automation, not tool, but what's another automation sequence or format or something that we can insert into our business?
Yeah, tracking inquiries and open leads and how to follow up with them. Mm-hmm. So I know that programs like Honeybook and those types of tools, they have like a dashboard where you can see all of your open leads and everything in there. For me, again, I'm the manual, no frills girl, and I use an Excel spreadsheet to track all of my inquiries, but it tracks when it came in, obviously the date and the location and things like that. But on there, I'm also tracking where the lead came from. And so, I've got a list of closed leads, ones where either people didn't follow up and it just kind of died off, or ones where they told me, either you're too expensive or we went with somebody else. And then I have like the handful of open leads, and I have a Google Calendar reminder every Monday morning to follow up with all of my open leads. And so I know, and I also make a note next to them, like when I last followed up. So I kind of know what the communication was. And for example, if it's been like me checking in 3 times and getting no response, and I usually just move them to the closed portion of my spreadsheet.
You close them. That's okay. I love that. So you follow up every Monday. Brilliant. There's a reminder for that. And then you follow up 3 times. If they're like incommunicado, they go to like the pit.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool.
Yeah.
What else? What else can we do?
Keeping track of income and expenses. So I do that kind of in 2 ways. Like the accounting software that I use to like track all of my expenses and everything, and add in notes about what the expenses were. I use GoDaddy Bookkeeping, and every time I tell people that, the look on their face is like, oh, I didn't know that GoDaddy had like an accounting program.
I was literally just thinking that.
Yes, exactly. I know, it's so weird. Well, when my friend told me about it, I was like, oh, wow, I never would have expected that. But basically it tied into all of my bank accounts, my PayPal account, my credit card. So all of my income and expenses automatically goes into there. And then the last day of every month, again, I have a calendar reminder for this. Mm-hmm. I reconcile all my income and expenses, go in and add in like the notes of what everything was, just so through that program, I always know like what my income and expenses were. And then separately, and maybe I'm crazy for like having so many, like keeping track of this in so many ways.
Nope, I love it.
But then I have a separate Excel spreadsheet where I track all of my income. So that shows the money that I've already collected. It shows what's on the books for that year. And then I have different like columns for like, I set my monetary goals for the year, and it's like X dollars needed to hit the goal. And I keep all my prior year's income like on that first page of the spreadsheet, so I can quickly like compare like at what point in the year that I've beaten the income that I had for the previous year, that kind of thing. I think it's so important for us to be knowledgeable about how much money we're making, how much money we're spending. And so those 2 particular types of ways to track, and those tools help you have a snapshot at any given time of like where your business is.
How do you feel that knowing, I feel like I know the answer to this, like what you're going to say, but how do you feel that knowing this information, I feel like it's very powerful, where we know like where our money's going, what's coming in. Like you just mentioned, when you know you've surpassed your income goal from the previous year, and let me back up. Does tracking your finances and just being such an excellent steward of your money within your business help you set goals for your business?
Definitely. It makes you kind of see what's realistic, but then it also allows you to make real-time changes. So for example, if in a month I notice that I've like spent way too much money on lifts, like car service, then the following month I'm like, okay, I've gotta like make sure that I'm budgeting in time to like take the subway instead of taking a car, that kind of thing. So it lets you make real-time changes. It helps you feel empowered because you kind of, what's happening in your business. And then at those times, if you like see that you're surpassing your goal, or for example, like this year I've booked 2 2019 weddings already, which is the furthest out that's happened. And so like seeing those stats like makes me feel awesome. And so it creates just this level of positive energy, and that keeps rolling and manifesting. And so it's just kind of like it's just a really great thing to do for a lot of different reasons.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's ever, well, not forever, but when do you think is a good time? I mean, we know these numbers and you have an amazing, very organized system. So it sounds like it's very, it's not easy, but it's organized and systematized. So you just go through kind of down the checklist. When do you think is the time to outsource bookkeeping? Is there ever a time?
It depends. So I'm kind of the mind that there is a way to make it easier on yourself. So like literally it will take you some, like if you're not that great with numbers, it will take you some time to get the process together. But like if you can start fresh at the beginning of a year rather than kind of deciding to implement this in June when you've got like 6 months of receipts in a bag, to go through, because that's a terribly daunting task. But if you can kind of start from the beginning of the year and just realize every time something comes in real time, be updating like your income spreadsheet. And then at the end of the month, take the time to like reconcile everything. It'll honestly maybe take you a half an hour. I think try it. But again, if it ends up like really not being your strength, and like for me with blogging, like if it's just something you just cannot factor in the like make the time for, then possibly outsource it. But I feel like if you if you're in a place in your business where you probably, even though it's something you really hate doing, but it may financially may not be something that isn't the best use of your money and you theoretically could be doing it yourself, then I think kind of try to figure out how to make it easy for yourself and try to handle it on your own.
Agreed.
But I'm super nerdy with the numbers. So like I kind of, it's terrible. I enjoy like that part of running a business, which I know is so odd, but
where's my calculator? Get Leah a calculator. I like it. Well, and I completely agree with you. And you just made such a good point that it really is so empowering to see your money. Like it did, like taxes this year did make me feel terrible. I'll just be honest. But
yeah,
also it was really great to be like, awesome. We have our expenses for the entire 2018 wedding season lined up. We have like this great cushion for any weddings that could go awry. You know what I mean? Like it did feel, and I am one of the folks who is not excellent with numbers, or at least that's what I've been telling myself for the last 20 years. And you are so right. You just kind of like, nailed it for me. I felt so empowered and so excited, and I don't really get that way about math, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's because money is so emotional. And if we can kind of manage it successfully, I feel like that makes us feel really good.
100%. Fair point. I'm going to write that down. Okay. So we have talked about onboarding. We've talked about how to kind of automate and systematize that. You can use automatize, guys, if you want to.
I like that. Yeah.
We've talked about automating your leads, or at least systematizing your leads. Leah's following up every Monday, which is great. And then now we've kind of moved into the financial aspect of our businesses, and you just made it sound so easy. It makes me feel great. But what is that? You know how we all kind of have like that purgatory where we onboard a couple, and then before their wedding, depending on how long they've booked out, like you have 2019 weddings, so do we. We kind of have this purgatory of where, well, I guess it depends on their package when it comes to planning services, but where you're not really talking to them, essentially, especially if you're the venue like I am, or if you're offering day of coordination services or what have you. Is there anything that we can kind of systematize in that in-between period that can help give us a better client experience?
That's a wonderful question. So let me speak from a planner's perspective real quick on that, and then I can talk from a non-planner perspective. So from the planner's perspective, like when I'm bringing on a more full planning or partial planning client, I always give them a heads up that there's going to be a lull in the planning process. So obviously in the beginning, we're emailing and talking a ton because they're booking all of they're booking potentially their venue and all of their vendors. And then towards the middle, it's kind of like the smaller tasks that me as a planner am not involved in. But one of the things that I do is I, again, have a Google Calendar reminder every 3 weeks is like a client check-in. So I will go through my entire list of open weddings and kind of just email, check in, like go through the checklist that I like, the to-do list that I have for them, check in, ask like, see, hey, where are you guys at with this? Do you need anything? And obviously sometimes there's more on that list than others. So as a planner, you can kind of make that a process. So make sure that you're checking in every few weeks just so that they feel like tended to kind of. And then I was talking to a photographer about this same thing, because usually like photographers or even venues, they get booked, and then the message is usually, okay, so we'll be in touch like 2 months out from your wedding to start talking about all your final details and everything. If you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out. But like you kind of talk to them at the beginning and then don't talk to them till there's 2 months left. I think sometimes it might be nice to just for like a photographer or for the venue or DJ or something, just to kind of like check in and see how the planning process is going. Like maybe every 3 months, or maybe even just like once in the middle of the process, because I think that adds such a great personal component to it. And it's not something that a lot of vendors do.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so like as part of your onboarding like as part of the onboarding checklist, it could be like either in your online tool or in your Google Calendar, like add in, like figure out what the halfway point is of their planning process and just add a reminder to like, hey, check in with like Joe and Lisa on this date, kind of thing.
I have a really quick clarifying question. I know this is a little bit nitty gritty, but you have so many awesome calendar reminders. Is this in your checklist when you onboard a client, like set reminders to touch base every 3 weeks or 3 months, whatever it is? And then you go in and like
that particular one is not. So I just have like every 3 weeks on a Monday, it's my check-in day. So it's like, it's not tied to a particular client in my Google Calendar. It's just every 3 weeks on a Monday, I've got like a chunk of time blocked out for checking in. So that's that. But yes, for all those other things, like put in the date for the rehearsal, put in the actual date for the wedding. I just don't want to, I write everything down, and it's the same approach I take like when I do day of schedules for myself. I don't want to have to remember anything. So even the most like obscure tiny thing, like one of the things that I recently added to my onboarding checklist was to add in a Google Calendar reminder that the Monday of like the wedding week to actually touch base with like the person who's going to be my day of assistant, just to like check in, confirm, give them final details. Cause I was realizing that like it would be maybe Thursday of the week of the wedding and I hadn't like checked in with them to confirm. So I'm like, okay, that's going on the checklist. So I no longer have to like remember to do that. It's just automatically there for me.
We've covered so much. This has been incredible. What have I missed?
I feel like people you shouldn't feel bad if you don't want to use these online tools. So I think one of the things that because I'm process oriented but not automated. I think maybe I've not addressed like some of the things that you can automate, but in terms of like taking the task completely off your plate. So one of the things some people do is they have automatic replies for inquiries, and within that like automatic reply email, sometimes it includes additional information. It may include pricing. So that's or it may include like a link to like one of the online schedulers, to schedule a call. So like basically you can just not have to individually respond to each inquiry you get. You send this automatic response. They can then set up a call with you, and that's how that process works. So that's like fully automatic. Something I mentioned before, like invoicing, the follow-up. So even though I manually follow up every Monday, you can set reminders in these tools that like ping the couple after 2 weeks, and that'll just say something like, hey, just a reminder, your proposal is only valid for like 2 more weeks. You know, if you have any questions, please reach out. So those are the type, like there's definitely ways to kind of not actually do those tasks anymore.
Do you feel like you'll ever move that way?
Possibly, if the business gets big enough. I mean, I feel like I'm not to the point where I'm so busy that I can't do these things. And it's also, just the way that I've designed my business. Like I do less weddings because I do more of like the full planning and the partial planning and don't do so much of month of. So my quantity is less, and therefore I'm able to like be a lot more hands-on. But if I was in a planning business where I was doing like a ton of month of coordination, that would probably be a time when I would automate some of these things.
Fair point. I love that. Okay. Has nothing to do with automation, but, I read this in your bio, and in my mind, I was like, I'm going to ask her about this because this is incredible. You've been mentioned and published in Vogue, Glamour, Marie Claire, Martha Stewart Weddings. You guys, we all know those names. Tell me what that was like. Like, how did that even happen? Also, what is that like?
It was amazing. Like, first of all, it's amazing. I used to be a music journalist for a long time, and there was just seeing your name in print, like, just will never get old for me. but being able to like share my knowledge in these settings with these very highly very visible publications is just pretty incredible. And so the way that I got published in those different places was a combination of either working with a PR firm or the contacts that I had made on my own with journalists. So, you know, for example, like I have a couple of writers who I may have met through some other forum, but I helped them out with one article. And now like when they have particular needs, either I'm on like the mass mailing that they'll send out for info, or sometimes they'll just send it directly to me because they know that I can like turn things around pretty quickly. So yeah, but no, still absolutely amazing. When I was quoted online on Vogue, I almost died.
Did you lose your mind? I seriously was like, I'm looking that up right now because it's so fun. So,
yeah, that was crazy.
Oh man, good for you. That's so wonderful, Leah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I just popped that question. I was like, yeah, I can't let her leave without asking about how that works. Do you feel like, okay, I'm sorry, just one last question about that. No. Do you feel like your location in New York ever is helpful with that? I mean, you mentioned you were a musical journalist. Is that irrelevant, especially now it's 2018 and everything's online? Or do you feel like because you're kind of in that amazing hub of, you know, publishing houses, magazine houses,
I actually don't think that location really has anything to do with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the part of it's just like hustling myself, you know, like working with good companies who can do some PR, like get me press opportunities and stuff like that. But then also kind of hustling and networking and making these great relationships. Yeah, I think anybody anywhere in the country really could achieve something like that.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Leah, thank you so much for being here. It is truly my pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate you spending your time with us today. Tell us where we can find you, online, offline. What do you have going on?
So my website is colorpopevents.com, and then all of my social handles, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, even though I don't really use Twitter, they're all at Colourpop Events. So pretty easy to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leah. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.